Welcome to It Matters, where we cut through the noise and dive deep into the issues that really shape our world. This isn't just another political podcast. This is where we call out the lies, expose the corruption, and challenge the status quo. Whether it's dissecting the latest political circus or spotlighting the real heroes fighting for justice, we're here to give you the unfiltered truth. So buckle up. It's time to get real, get informed, and get ready to be honest. This is It Matters. All right, I've got my favorite Buffalo Bills fan, favorite Republican, Erin, News Nation buddy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? What an intro.
Yeah, right? You know, I got to give you your props. Buffalo Bills fan, like a tortured Buffalo Bills fan.
Lifelong. Done this my whole life being a Bills fan. That's what I'm doing for my bachelorette. I'm going to a Bills game.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Getting married. So first, give the audience a little background on you, your career, and then we'll jump right in.
Yeah, I'm originally from Rochester, New York. Graduated from the University of Connecticut with my degree in political science. In 2008, I interned at the convention in Minnesota where Republicans nominated John McCain. Then when I graduated college, I went on Ron Johnson's first campaign in Wisconsin. I did 2 cycles in Wisconsin. I've worked in New York. I've worked on national presidential campaigns, and I've worked on the Hill for about 6.5 years. So that's like the quickest summary of my resume possible.
See? So what's it like to work on the Hill versus like working on campaigns? Because they're 2 totally different worlds.
They are. And I started in campaigns. And I think that when you start on the political side versus the official side, you think that, oh, like I could never do the Hill. Like I'm a campaign person. And there are plenty of people who couldn't do both, but
they won't allow me on the official side. Like the official side will never allow me over there.
Yeah. And people just don't understand that like you can do both. And so I like took a shot and got a job in the Senate working for John Thune at Senate Republican Conference, which is the communications arm, PR machine for the Republican senators on the Hill. I did that job and was his press secretary for 3 years. And I gotta tell you, Senator John Thune of South Dakota is one of the best people in the country. He is an incredible man, an incredible boss. And then I went over to the House side and I worked for Kevin McCarthy. At the time, Paul Ryan was speaker. And Kevin was Republican leader. And that was like one of the funnest jobs I've ever had. And
to go from Thune and I disagree on a ton of things, but I really do think he's a stand-up guy. Yeah. Him working with Democrats across the aisle on some of the border stuff, I think he's just been great. Tell me a little bit about working with Thune and then what, like, McCarthy's a total kind of switch.
I mean, that's also representative of the switch from the Senate to the House. The same way, I think if you start on the political side versus the Hill side or the official side, you feel like you're more connected to one than the other. It's the same thing. If you work on the Hill, you're partial to the side you start on. So I will always be like a Senate institutionalist. Like, let's talk filibuster. Let's talk about, like, I love the Senate as an institution. And so then you go over to the House and like, it's a bar brawl over there. Like they make rules up as they go along. They like the Rules Committee does not do the same thing on each side. It's much more quick and reactive on the House side. And that's also like reflected in the members.
Yeah.
Senator Thune is an incredible person, an incredible statesman. I think the country missed out by not like electing John Thune. I just think the world of him. Just a great guy. And Kevin McCarthy, he is fun. He is tenacious. He is outgoing and has no problem telling you exactly where he stands. Mm-hmm. He's very smart and he is a lot of fun to be around. And he doesn't really, Kevin is like an up by your bootstraps kind of guy. He won the lotto in California and opened up a sandwich shop. And like that.
Yeah, it was like not long after college, right?
When he graduated like high school. So he was doing this and he went to community college and like he ended up becoming the Republican Assembly Speaker as a freshman and like not the speaker, but the Republican Assembly leader.
Yeah.
As a freshman and like he studies the maps and he wants to know members' districts and like that's always this like hungry mentality that Kevin McCarthy's had. And he was a great boss. It was a lot of fun working for him.
Do you think he will spend the rest of his breathing life trying to destroy Matt Gaetz? Because it seems like that's all I hear him talk about these days.
No, I think that there's so much ahead for Kevin. He could do any number of things. He could become one of the biggest lobbyists in DC. He knows all the industries really well. If Trump wins, who knows? Maybe he goes in the admin, but like the world's Kevin's oyster now. And so it's just a matter of picking what he wants to do.
See, and that's a perfect pivot point because Donald Trump is running against now Kamala Harris. And what do you think about the quick shift? Like in 28 days, we went from Joe Biden and that debate to now Kamala Harris appears to be like up in the race.
Yeah, this is kind of like the Donald Trump anomaly, right? It's the thing that it has taken two unbelievably earth-shattering, cataclysmic events to throw Donald Trump off the march to winning. Yeah. And I say that because I joined the Trump campaign in March of 2019, and we were cruising at that point toward re-election. And it took a once in 100 years pandemic to push that campaign off its mark. It took the Democrats shoving their president off the ballot in an unprecedented measure to throw Donald Trump off the mark of a successful march to winning again. It really only happens to Donald Trump.
Why can't he get back on message, though? This seems like, I mean, it's not as easy as running against Biden, but like, it shouldn't be as hard as he's making it.
Donald Trump, at the end of the day, is going to do exactly what he wants and when he wants to. At a rally over the weekend, he's reading off prompter. And when I worked for him, it was 2019 through the end of 2020. And I think the general numbers we were told was like, 20% of his rally speeches is prompter, 80% is off the cuff. That's more like a roadmap of where he's going. I don't know if that's still true.
Yeah.
But like that was more of the style of how he used to read them, back 4 or 5 years ago. With that said, he at the rally over the weekend was saying, well, you guys are okay if I go off prompter, right? So it's clear people in his camp, or he's hearing it on TV, that he needs to stay on message and stay focused. And yet he's still letting that part of him that says like, well, I'm going to do what I want to do, be the driving force of his message.
And now he brought in Lewandowski.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how that helps anything, because like whenever we're talking about Corey, we're talking about the things that come along with Corey, like the scandal and like the burn everything down. And I just don't know how at this point that helps Trump. Like you would think he wants to be the main focus, and I don't know, like where's the logic? If you're thinking like the Trump campaign right now, what's the plan?
Well, there's a couple of things. There's been this kind of shift in each of Trump's campaigns, right? It was from Lewandowski.
Right around this time.
It was from Lewandowski to Kellyanne Conway, right? Mm-hmm. And then it was from Brad Parscale to Bill Stepien.
Yep.
This isn't quite the same because it's not that Corey's coming in to become campaign manager or chair or whatever. He's just coming on as an advisor. But he understands the president and the president's voice really well. And he's a big time fighter for him. That's another voice that carries senior credibility, that carries senior weight, and can go on TV on your behalf and help get the earned media coverage for the campaign and do the Sunday show as hits and be unapologetic in the more public portion of the fight, while understanding the man behind the scenes and being able to give him advice he feels safe and confident with. Yeah.
But does Trump need to like double down on the base right now, or does he need to turn out like independents? Because Corey doesn't seem like he's going to turn out any undecided voters. Like he's a very double down on the base.
But no staff hire is going to be for political like there's no one that he could hire that they would say, ooh, that's going to sway an independent voter. Because at the end of the day, voters are still going to vote top of the ticket the same way that, while people might like Tim Walz, people are voting for Kamala Harris, not Tim Walz. It's a package, but they're voting top. I think for Donald Trump right now, he should be talking to the moderates, the independents, those swing voters. And this was something back when Joe Biden was at the top of the ticket and Democrats were still seeing fractions throughout the coalition during the primary process. I said the longer this goes on, the harder it is to pivot to your general election messaging because you're bogged down in the fight for the primary. Well, now fortunes are kind of reversed here, right? Kamala has clearly shifted to a general election messaging platform, but Trump is going back to what feels most comfortable and natural to him right now, which is to do his rallies, is to give his big speeches. The bigger question isn't necessarily what Trump says at a rally, as it is what they're putting on TV right now. What message? Yeah, what are they paying for? And right now, that message is immigration. From what I've seen, they just did one on Bidenomics, and Kamala saying we love this. This is our big thing. So that's more the weight of the message that the American people are going to hear versus what he's saying at rallies.
What do you think Democrats are underestimating right now? Because the wind feels like it's at our back, but anything can happen.
Well, I think that's one thing that Democrats are underestimating is that anything can happen. I mean, look at what we've seen in the last 6 months of this election cycle, let alone the last 2 months.
Yeah.
Every time we turn around, it's another earth-shattering news cycle. I think Democrats could find themselves, one, underestimating how difficult it is to win female voters, because the one thing that will really turn a lot of female voters off is if you say, vote for me because I'm a woman. She's the first woman. Women are harder to win over to women than they are to men. And that independent swing voter, if the independent female swing voter, if they feel that they're being patronized to, that they're being told that they need to vote for Kamala to be a good woman, that they need to, that this is like the logical choice for women, or that Kamala becomes a bit of like a caricature in the media somehow, that's going to turn voters off. So Democrats have to be really careful about how they court the independent female vote, because even like my sisters, like one's a Republican, one's a Democrat. My Democrat sister said nothing turns me off more than a woman saying vote for me because I'm a woman. That's one thing to underestimate. And then I might say the hidden Trump voter. There are probably people now that have, the way that I think Democrats stopped responding to pollsters when things were bad, I think there are some independent voters that might have come over to Trump's side that aren't talking to pollsters anymore the way they might have a month and a half, 2 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always this undercurrent of Trump voters who, I don't want to say they're embarrassed to be Trump voters, but they're not as comfortable, especially I think in like suburbs around cities, don't feel as comfortable saying they're Trump voters. And so there's always this undercounting of them. And so as we head into kind of this post-convention period, I keep wondering, what about Republican, especially Republican women, do Democrats not understand? Because you've seen, like you said, Democrats not really focus on Kamala being the first woman president and that kind of 2016 message. But I still don't think we really understand like white women and the white women vote. Like we think we do, but the more I watch interviews, the more I watch focus groups, there's, I think, this sense of like a security vote, like the economic vote, that it just doesn't feel like we understand.
Yeah, and I think this is true for almost every demographic you can break things down to, but it's always worth noting that like voting blocks are not monolithic.
Absolutely.
And that includes white suburban female voters, right? There's a lot of nuances, but if you're going to talk about like conservative women and Republican women and like understanding the nuances of why we are Republican, it is generally monetarily based. It's generally economically based. It's generally security based. And those are two things that right now, when you look at the economy and immigration, Republicans still pull very strongly on those policies as more effective leaders on it than Democrats, generally speaking, in polling. That's the message we need to be delivering to women. And it's the message that means that you have to be creative in targeting your advertising. And this is something that buying TV ads, there's an art, there's a science to it. And then there's like,
just spending a ton of money.
Right. A luck of the draw type of thing too, right? If you want to advertise in Iowa, it means you have to buy into Omaha, Nebraska, right? Like there's a science to it, and then there's like a randomness to it. But I'm going to be really curious this cycle to see what spends look like on platforms that are angled toward women. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking at like prime time on Bravo right now, right? They're generally averaging anywhere between like 400,000 on a low night and upwards of like 800,000, a million viewers that sit in that core 18 to 29-year-old demographic. Mm-hmm. If you break that down, I'm sure it skews female heavily. And if you look at that, that's just one portion. That's just one viewer sect of their nightly audience. What are we doing? Like, I am a 36-year-old female woman, and I love me some Bravo TV.
Hello, Andy Cohen.
Love him. So, like, what are we doing to target a message where women are? And does that include things like, are we going to be driving the more of the economic message on things like Bravo? Or are you going to be paying into the WNBA games, to covering broadcasts now when it comes to women's soccer and other female-dominated sports that are really having a rise right now? I'm going to be really interested, and I'm sure there will be some brilliant case study about the advertising targeting women in this cycle just due to the changes in viewing patterns.
Do you think the message of, like, what kind of messaging do you think Republicans should be doing right now? Is it the fear and doom and gloom around immigration, or is it a hopeful future, or do you do both? How do you balance that?
Right now, you can do both. But, and as much as voters say it, and they say it in focus groups, and they say it all the time.
They're liars.
Yeah, they hate negative advertising, but nothing motivates a voter more than a negative ad. And it sucks, and it's going to get real dark here, people. Like, it is good. Like, it's going to be, but both sides are going to do it. Mm-hmm. Both sides are going to run negative ads about each other. I think at this point, you can split your message. You can do a hopeful, optimistic, economic, look back, look forward message, and a negative ad message, which means look at the failures of the Biden-Harris administration on the border. Donald Trump can lead on it. And you can probably, in each of those ads, depending how you cut it, split the message for both. You can do an ad that has a negative and a positive message in it for both the economy and so, like, they could split their ads right now and run them that way.
What do you think Democrats' biggest weakness is right now? I think I know what your answer is going to be.
Oh, it's the happiness right now. You guys got to come back down to earth. Like
the sugar high.
The honeymoon's going to end, guys. Like, there is a concrete wall in politics, and it's called reality. And like, as much as the media is happy and Democrats are in a honeymoon, come the end of next week, like.
It's a short runway, though. I mean, like, let's be honest. Does the sugar high have to wear off? I mean, we've got 80 something days left. Like, the way that Donald Trump doesn't stay on message, I'm not saying the media could give Democrats an out, but like, there is the runway where you see fawning coverage that
it's unforced errors that would be the problem, right? Mm-hmm. So now that Kamala's gaggling on her bus tour, which I think is a brilliant, like, it's not a brilliant move, but this is like, it's like checking the boxes. Like, you're on a bus tour, you gaggle at your stops. Like,
yep.
Like, this is the easy stuff of campaigning. But the debate, if a reporter begins to become somebody that irritates her, that could lead to a negative interaction where she says something off the cuff. Or even the VP nominee. I know I've talked about how people don't vote down ballot, but Tim Walz is getting a little looser and a little more comfortable. And he's starting to tiptoe toward the more aggressive, bombastic language. I mean, it's not a perfect example, but he was at a fundraiser in Boston last week and said something to the effect of like, see, I'm proof that not all football coaches are idiots. And it's like...
Yeah, he was making fun of Tommy Tuberville.
Right, but like in that instance, like that's kind of rude. Like I gotta be honest with you. Like I have a college football coach for an uncle. Like these aren't sensitive types. I'd be like, that's so offensive. You're not going to win the football coach voting block here. But like he's tiptoeing in that direction. The looser and more comfortable you get is when you have those unforced errors and you.
But isn't that what people like now? Like the bombastic, loose. I mean, that like Trump has kind of opened the door to it, hasn't he?
People like it because this is the thing that I think a lot of talking heads forget is politics is it's an industry of emotion.
Yeah, absolutely.
We play to people's emotions so that we can get them to go out and vote. And so Donald Trump getting a bunch of people fired up for the first time, feeling like, hey, that's somebody who like he's out there looking like he cares about what I'm saying, versus Hillary, who had incredible negatives, and people had a very baked in notion of her. And when she was Secretary of State, right, there's like a litany of things you can hit her on.
Yeah.
Right. The Benghazi comment, I think, is one that sticks out in my mind. Again, unforced error. Like, what does it matter? Right. She throws that out there, and it was like, well, people died. So
yeah, she made it very easy to not like her, and she made it very hard to continuously defend her.
And so but also like, this isn't new to Donald Trump. I think if people look back in history, like we rewind, like let's go back to like the 1992 Republican National Convention in Houston. Mm-hmm. It was the primary was George H.W. Bush and Pat Buchanan.
Yep.
And Pat Buchanan had like secured enough delegates to get himself a primetime speaking slot on the first night, and gave a very fiery culture war speech at the convention in 92, derailing a lot of the messaging that the H.W. Bush camp was trying to do and trying to unify the party, right? Like, you got to be careful with your conventions, because like a good speech could go sideways, but like, it's not new to Trump. It's been slow. It has been building, but Trump just took it to a different level.
How do Republicans respond to abortion? Because Democrats have made it such a big focus, rightfully so. And it feels like one of those issues now that, much like immigration to Democrats, we don't really know how to message on it.
I think back in 21 and 22, what I was telling clients was, you need to be unafraid to take a position on abortion.
Yeah.
And that is generally what gets Republicans in trouble, is because the very, pro-life, Christian conservatives, a lot of them is like life begins at conception, right? Like that's when a baby starts, all the way through 9 months. You get to maybe a bit more of a more moderate candidate. You look at somebody like Glenn Youngkin. I think he was at 15-ish weeks?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. You got to be unafraid to say it. And that's what gets Republicans in the biggest amount of trouble, is a lot of Republicans, and I would say the majority of the party, fall, right around the first trimester, and cases of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I mean, that's the core of what Republicans believe. But because they're afraid of retribution from one part of the party, they don't stand up and be, unafraid. And I think Democrats likely face the same issue on something like immigration, right? When you're worried about really offending one part of your constituency, it makes it hard. But for abortion, Republicans need to sound like they're sane adults and say what they believe. And they should also say, if they're running for federal office or state office, this is something that needs to be handled at the state level. And I encourage the governor to consider X legislation that's do your homework, right? Like, set your bounds. Find something that you can support in the state, point to it, or point to what the governor's done. But having an answer that is like, I believe in the right to life, just is not going to reassure women that you're not going to take away their ability to have bodily autonomy.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the polling data, it's like 60% of Americans and like more than 50% of Republicans now support, having reproductive autonomy. And so it's become this thing that I think Democrats really have been, like the midterms, that was like the rallying cry. And it feels like heading into this upcoming election, Republicans haven't figured out how to really talk about it yet. And so you're going to hear Democrats hammer that point, and you're going to hear Republicans hammer immigration. And you and I talk about this on air a lot. I always say Republicans put up the Thune bill and then Trump smacked it down. But like, Democrats don't have a great answer on immigration.
Right.
Like when we're being honest about it, like there's the answer in private, which is we need to make sure we're securing our border. It's the fact that President Obama deported more undocumented immigrants than like any president before him. But we haven't figured out how to match the tough rhetoric with the fact that we've got this really big tent and we don't want to upset progressives and, all that. Like, what advice do you have for Democrats?
Yeah, right. The thing is, Democrats have won on an immigration playbook. Look at the New York special election in Congress. It's the same thing. Republicans can win talking about abortion and protecting life at the same time. You just have to be unafraid to say what you believe, right? You got to be able to say, like, Democrats have to be able to say, like, what has been happening at the southern border was a failure. That we saw millions and millions of people pour into the United States, an average of 2 million people a year for the first 3 years. That's not good enough for this country. And we got to make sure, and then go into what you believe about whether it's reforms to whatever part of the immigration system. But you got to be willing to acknowledge the obvious. And that's really a lot of what got Joe Biden in trouble outside of the debate performance. Was he just kept telling the American people, everything's fine, the border's fine, the economy's fine. And people are like, it's $8 a bag of chips here. Like, I can't afford this anymore. Like, there are people dying on property in Eagle Pass, Texas, because, like, the border's, like, it's the hardest thing, but stating the obvious sometimes just helps so much in messaging.
It's interesting because, like, Democrats are supposed to be, we're the party of, like, feelings. But when it comes to the economy, we have not been good at being able to bring those feels over and make it resonate with voters. Like our arguments have been very intellectual arguments, and like, sure, they may be backed up by statistics, but like the average person doesn't vote by statistics. They vote by their feelings and by their pocketbooks. Right. And so like, I continuously make the argument, inflation's down by 60% over the last 2 years. And then my grandma goes, cool, but when I go to the grocery store, milk is twice as expensive. So ration that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hardest part, right? Like, there's so much that this is the same thing, but like right now, like the vibes are good for Kamala. Everybody feels good about this right now, but people still don't feel good about the economy. And this is where Republicans can strike. Like, every time Joe Biden stands there and holds her hand and talks about what a great job they've done on the economy and ties them together, people didn't like what Joe Biden was doing. So tie them together. Like, this needs to still be like, she's as culpable as he is. So like, they're starting to do that. They did put out the, Bidenomics ad that they're running. But like the vibes thing, like we were saying this earlier, but like emotion is how you vote. And so you might feel like the vibes are good about Kamala, but maybe you still don't think the vibes are good about the economy. And you think, oh man, I like her, but the economy's still really bad. And I know, like, she was there this whole time. What was she doing? All right, well, like, the feels on my economy feeling about, like, I'm going to vote for somebody I think is going to do a better job than, like, maybe I like her, but I don't like this. Like, this is the predictive science of politics, folks. We're just, like, trying to get you to feel something for us.
My prediction is you're going to hear Democrats talk a lot about Democratic policies and remove the word Biden from a lot of things and talk about under Democratic leadership, under Democrats. And that's how you get that separation of celebrating the things that Democrats have done without tying the Biden administration to it.
Oh, yeah. My name of the convention for Democrats is the Joe Biden swan song, right? You're going to get him. He's going to be lauded as a hero. I don't know if you are going to hear much about Joe Biden from any of the primetime speakers after that. Maybe a quick nod to say, but like, nobody's talking about the economy under Joe Biden. Nobody's talking about Joe Biden. They will be, I doubt you see Joe Biden out much besides.
He's going on vacation.
Yeah,
as soon as the speech is over tonight, he's going to Cali and then to Rehoboth.
Yeah. And then maybe a rally or two in Scranton, right? Mm-hmm. Like that.
Yeah, he'll hit up some, I don't know, rural white Pennsylvania, maybe some like out in Michigan. So wrapping up, if you're Kamala Harris, how do you debate Donald Trump? Because we now know it's going to happen. But I mean, like, debating Trump is this amorphous thing that no one has looked good doing. Like, you do it, but no one comes out looking better for it.
I think there are a couple of things she should do. One, it goes to negotiations on the debate stage. She has to, if I was her, eliminate the mic muting and the lack of audience.
Really? I would never want Donald Trump in front of an audience. He plays to an audience. That's his super strength.
Right. So we've been talking about scripted versus unscripted moments and how unscripted moments are what get you in trouble. And then I lead you to the path of the unscripted moment. And you're like, why would you leave me in an unscripted moment? Don't try to have an unscripted moment. What are you thinking? How do you?
You know, that's actually a good point. You put Trump supporters in the audience and he starts playing to his own supporters. I mean, that's not the audience that he needs to be trying to win over.
But there's a difference in the audience style you could have. You could negotiate to a town hall style.
I do think a town hall would be good for the country to see.
But you can also have audience reaction even there. Remember 2016, Hillary versus Trump. Hillary, well, we're so glad that no one with the demeanor of Donald Trump is ever going to be able to, run the justice system in this country. And his response off the cuff, because you'd be in jail, and you heard the audience. But that was a town hall. So, but you could see a little bit in his reaction that he knew he had landed that kind of quick punch. And that the audience liked it. So it doesn't have to be a full big crowd. You can still lead to those unscripted moments in a town hall style setting. If there are people in the room, he's going to play to them.
Do you think that she has to be careful in terms of, look, there is the likability in the, like, her being a woman, her being a black woman, like, there are going to be things that she can't do that other people can do. Do you think that she could walk into a trap?
No, I bet they're prepping pretty well with her. There's a lot of tape now of Trump debating. Back in 15 and 16, there wasn't that much tape. We saw him get really aggressive in that first debate in 20. So you've got a lot of footage of him just on the debate stage. So he's easier to map against now than he would have been. But I think it's really interesting that Donald Trump's brought Tulsi Gabbard in his circle for his debate prep sessions. She's seen Kamala on a debate stage, so she's going to have a good sense of what could knock her off her mark versus Mike Pence, who's just a bit more of a passive individual in terms of he's not bombastic. It's just not his style. So
my former boss John Delaney was on that debate stage with Gabbard and Harris. And look, I'm no Tulsi Gabbard fan, but like, she is a tough debater. And so Trump preparing against Gabbard, I think, is a pretty good preparation for what he'll see on stage.
Yeah, the best debate prep you can do against Donald Trump, I think, is prepare your own message, stay consistent in it, and let him do what he's going to do. Don't try to set a trap for him. Don't try and do a gotcha or try and goad him. He will get there on his own. He will take an answer and get aggressive with it and say something off the cuff on his own. You don't have to lead this horse to water and make him drink. So let him do it. I'm sure there's a word you can throw in that'll be something that could get him, but you got to stay focused on delivering your message and stay there and let that handle how it's going to go. Because if you're Kamala, you've got way more to lose. Debates don't pick winners. They definitely pick losers.
They decimate presidential chances, as we've.
Even if you go back to Terry McAuliffe versus Glenn Youngkin, Terry McAuliffe had that answer where he was very flippant about parents not being able, that like the state gets to decide their children's education. Boom, cut into an ad, and it was right at the time where school boards versus parents were very big in Virginia. And so, again, we don't pick the winner, but you put something bad out there and you can pick the loser. And I think she comes out of this looking bad if she feeds into his kind of tone at her or a quip at her, unless it is something that she can absolutely turn around and definitively put down, but not because I didn't love her versus Mike Pence when she was like, I'm speaking.
Yeah. And people didn't like that with the protesters a couple weeks ago either.
Right. Like, they're like, that's not a good enough answer. And he'll be prepared for that because they're like, I'm speaking. And his response was, you're not making any sense.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. There's an easy 1-2 punch back there. So this is like, again, a woman critiquing a woman. We're always harder on each other. She's got to find a way to say, like, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. It's clear we're not keen on letting that happen this evening, but I'm going to do my best to get take your swipe, but rise above. Like, it's keen, we're seeing what we want to say. If it goes that way, like, there are plenty of ways to handle it, but like,
it's a hell of a race.
Yes.
Last question, who's got the wind at their back? Like, I know Harris says she's the underdog right now, but who is the real underdog right now?
Oh, I think the real underdog right now is the Trump campaign, and I don't think that's surprising anybody. She's up in the polls, but I think it's even tough to call either of them an underdog. This is still very much a neck and neck race, especially when you're looking at the breakdown on swing states, swing counties, those hard to target DMAs that you're going to, like, if you're living in Atlanta, Georgia, I feel bad for you right now. Your TV has to be all ads, and it
county is going to get carpeted.
Like, you live in some of these DMAs, like, say goodbye to just turn it, like, you're going to want to turn it off because there's going to be a lot of ads coming out.
Yeah, you live in Dearborn, Michigan, you live in Fulton County, like.
Oh yeah. If you're sitting up in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, watch out. We're coming for you. We got them ads.
Erin Perrine, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to have you back. And I'll see you on air tonight.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for being with me today. Share this episode with others, like and review it, and please keep learning all you can so that you can make an informed voting decision this year. Come back next week for more Truth in Politics. I'm Michael Starr Hopkins, and this is It Matters.